na tayo. That's just in a capsule what more or less you were reviewed with regards to the physiology and the condition, particularly the condition of Addison's disease, which is the deficiency in the production of the hormones. Uh, we'll go into the details of that video, starting with the mechanism, the control mechanism. So most of our hormones are usually controlled by a negative feedback mechanism, wherein for the adrenals, it is usually the level of cortisol that will shut off the production of your ACTH, thus decreasing the stimulation to your adrenals. So, hindi yung aldosterone, hindi yung sex hormones, but it is the cortisol level that is important in the negative feedback mechanism for the adrenals. So if the cortisol level goes up in a normal setting, then the CRH, cortisol releasing hormone, is decreased in the hypothalamus, and subsequently there is no production of your ACTH. And the reverse would be true. The steroid hormone or cortisol is low, then there would be a stimulation of your ACTH to the adrenal gland. This is just the same, but a more detailed representation of these regulatory mechanisms. As far as your renin-angiotensin system, the mechanism of the feedback mechanism for this would be the monitoring of your renal blood flow to the kidneys, a decrease in blood pressure, and the decrease in your serum sodium level. So the production of aldosterone will be dependent on these things. Madaling maintindihan, low blood pressure, madaling maintindihan, mababang sodium level to stimulate aldosterone secretion. But what I would like to emphasize here would be a decrease in renal blood flow. A decrease in renal blood flow may occur in two situations. It may be a decrease in systemic blood pressure, that is one. But it can also be decreased in local constriction of your renal artery. So the systemic circulation may not be affected. In fact, your blood pressure may be high if there is constriction of the renal artery supplying the kidney. And this we know for a fact because in renal artery stenosis, leading to a decrease in renal blood flow, blood pressure is very, very high, even in children. So it's not in all cases where patients would have a low blood pressure for you to have a decrease in renal blood flow. So, pero yung run of the mill, of course, a decrease in blood flow, a decrease in cardiac output, or a decrease in your venous return, all of these subsequently decreases your renal blood flow, and your renin-angiotensin system will be stimulated. So, from that stimulus that would be monitored in the juxtamedullary apparatus, where your renin is secreted, and with your angiotensin, and renin will convert your angiotensin to angiotensin 1, and subsequently to angiotensin 2, with your converting enzymes to angiotensin 3, both of which are potent vasoconstrictors. And your aldosterone subsequently will be secreted. So, as in the video, it was mentioned to us that aldosterone will retain or reabsorb sodium as well as water with it. But what does not emphasize is the fact that sodium is reabsorbed in the expense of potassium. So sodium goes in, potassium is excreted in the urine. This is a very important relationship between the two, because when we talk about hyperaldosteronism and hypoaldosteronism, we cannot forget the, the potassium balance as well. So we have to take note of the balance of this, which is very important, because potassium balance, especially in hyperkalemia or even in hypokalemia, may be a life-threatening condition. Baka hindi pa siya magka-problema masyado with the sodium and water reabsorption or excretion. It would be the hypo or hyperkalemia that would be a medical emergency. And we have the regulatory secretion of the gonadal hormones. And the gonadal hormones are usually secreted in a positive manner. Okay. So let's go back to the cortisol. We say that it was also mentioned in the video that the cortisol is kind of a stress hormone, and as such, it has its physiologic actions. And part of it was mentioned that it induces insulin resistance. So what does it mean? Ano ba yung insulin resistance? So in effect, what does it do? So when you have insulin resistance, the cells will not be able to take up glucose. And because of that, there will be further production of glucose. So tataas lalo yung glucose level. And with the insulin resistance, another important effect of which would be the deposition of fat, especially in your central area. That's why you have something called obesity if you have excess steroid in your body. So that happens. And resorption of bone. So meron siyang rapid bone loss and osteoporosis that may happen due to this insulin resistance. So that's metabolic, physiologic yun. At that level of physiologic, all is well. But in times of excess or say deficiency, then we would have problems. Kaya nga in metabolism, insufficiency, you go into hypoglycemia, and in excess, hyperglycemia. For the cardiovascular system, you have a positive inotropic effect here. What is inotropic? What do you understand? The strength of cardiac contraction. And because there is a stronger cardiac contraction, you would expect a stronger or a bigger cardiac output. And of course, an increase in blood pressure. That's why an insufficiency would produce hypotension and an excess hypertension naman. For the immune system, you know that this is anti-inflammatory. And in insufficiency, you have an increase in histamine and pro-inflammatory cytokines. So you would be reacting so much more if your cortisol level would decrease. But if it is in excess, it suppresses your inflammatory response. So it impairs inflammatory and cell-mediated immunity. And you are susceptible to infection. So, CNS is physiologically modulates mood, emotion, and it penetrates your blood-brain barrier. So maganda ang mood mo. Insufficiency, walang masyadong effect, but if this is in excess, you have depression, you have psychosis. So in exogenous steroid use, one of the complications that we need to look into would also be steroid-induced psychosis. So behavioral changes would be present. And for the bone, as we mentioned, in excess, it would cause osteopenia or osteoporosis and hypocalcemia. Growth-wise, in insufficiency, there is underdevelopment of organs, prematurity, and for excess, you have stunting as well, because of the early closure of the epiphysis. So this is very important, especially when we are treating patients already using high-dose steroids. So mga conditions that would require high-dose steroids, one of the problems in a growing child would be the stunting of their growth. They would not be able to achieve their growth potential because of excessive steroid administration. And for the mineralocorticoid, so we have mentioned this already. It maintains intravascular volume, it absorbs sodium, and potassium is secreted out. So you lose potassium with your aldosterone. In times of insufficiency, you have weight loss, hypotension or shock. The patient is hyponatremic, but they would be hyperkalemic. And in excess, the patient would have hypertension, sodium retention. What is not rated here is the opposite. You might also go into a hypokalemic state due to an excess of your aldosterone. So when we talk about the causes of primary adrenal insufficiency, the lesion is at the level of the adrenal gland. So the defect is at the adrenal gland. And as the adrenals would not be able to produce any of the hormone, if this is a total decrease in hormone production, yung three categories, yung mineralocorticoid, glucocorticoid, and the sex hormones are all decreased. But as we mentioned, the stimulation of adrenal hormone production would be dependent on your cortisol level. So in this case, you have a low cortisol level if this is primary adrenal insufficiency, as well as an increase in your CRH and your ACTH levels. So if you have that picture, you know that you are dealing with a patient with primary adrenal insufficiency. So these are just the causes of primary renal insufficiency. You have impaired steroidogenesis conditions. You have also the congenital adrenal hyperplasia. You also have the steroidogenic enzyme deficiency and defects in cholesterol synthesis metabolism. As you can see in this listing, they are all, they have something to do with genetic problems. And part of the part of the diagnostic criteria probably is to be able to work up these patients based on the genetic conditions with the clinical manifestations. So, in the video, it was mentioned that kung primary adrenal insufficiency or Addison's disease, ano yung most common condition in 75% of cases? What was mentioned is autoimmune disease and congenital adrenal or 21 hydroxylase deficiency, which is part of the condition that brings about your congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So, but in children, it's not the autoimmune disease, especially in the very young, that is the most common. It would be your congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Again, other causes. You have your ACTH resistance, your impaired impaired redox homeostasis and other miscellaneous causes for the primary adrenal hyperplasia. Again, all of them would have genetic problems. For mineralocorticoid or mineral myocardial defects, hemorrhage, these are some of these other causes like hemorrhage. In bilateral adrenal hemorrhage, these are usually seen in patients who are high risk newborns, patients who have severe sepsis, asphyxia right after birth. This is one of the things that we would monitor for if they go into adrenal insufficiency. It may be secondary to adrenal hemorrhage. Then trauma or surgery, infection. Part of this, you've heard your meningococcal disease.